Preseason game number 2 is wrapped up, and we got a lot to dissect from the Grizzlies Hornets matchup. But we also got to talk about Marcus Smart. There's an injury update that I got for you on him. And then we got to talk about Zach Edey. I've been hearing it. A lot of people saying, oh, Zach Edey ain't getting the ball in the post. I got some answers for you. I asked the players, I asked the coaches. Let's talk about all that coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you guys for tuning in with me on today as I go solo without my co-host Joe Mullinax getting the day off on today. But make sure you continue to tune in to Locked On Grizzlies anywhere and wherever you get your podcasts, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen, wherever you watch like YouTube. Locked On Grizzlies is there. So make sure you continue to tune in with us and like, rate, review, comment, subscribe, all of those good things so we can continue to make Locked On Grizzlies a go-to show for you. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com to get started and take advantage of that opportunity. Speaking of getting started on today, I really don't know where to get started, but we got a lot to talk about in today's show. I'm going to get started actually with just breaking down the game. I got a few points, key points that I took away from the Grizzlies Hornets game. The Grizzlies lost to the Hornets 119-94 in their second preseason game, the first one at FedEx Forum. So I was there, talked to Coach Taylor Jenkins after the game, talked to a bunch of the players. So we're going to also, in our second segment, we'll get a Marcus Smart injury update. I'll tell you everything that I know there and how, his opportunities for playing both for going forward. Then we'll talk about Zach Edey. I think that's something that a lot of you have actually mentioned to me about, and I've heard other people talking about it as well, this whole idea of what's going on there. Does Zach Edey supposed to get the ball more in the post? Why aren't the Grizzlies getting the ball to him more in the post? Or if you think they are getting the ball to him in the post and he's just not scoring. We'll talk about all that in the third segment. But in the first segment, we're just going to break down the game. Grizzlies Hornets. Grizzlies, as I said earlier, lost 119-94 in this game. A lot of things stood out to me. If you just want to take a raw look, at the stat sheet from this one, Desmond Bane led the way for the Grizzlies, had 17 points. You had a couple guys come off the bench, scored really well. Jay Huff came off the bench with 15 points, made 4 3-pointers. Jalen Wells scored 12 points off the bench. In the starting lineup, you had Zach Edey with 10 points, Santi Aldama with 10, John Conchar, who started. So actually, it was John Conchar who stepped into the starting lineup. And Marcus Smart moved to point guard. So you had Marcus Smart at point guard, Desmond Bane at the 2, John Conchar, and then you had Santi Aldama and Zach Edey. So Scottie Pippen still came off the bench and was actually really good off the bench, pressuring the basketball. I think he finished with 8 points and 5 assists in this game. Still had 3 turnovers. And speaking of the turnovers, that's the first thing that I want to talk about as a team. 22 turnovers for the Grizzlies in this game. Now, in the last game, turnovers were a bit of an issue, too. I think they finished in the mid-20s as well in their first preseason game. But what stands out about this one is the assist numbers were down a little bit. He still finished with 30-plus assists. 30 assists is elite in the NBA. And the Grizzlies had over 30 assists in that first game. This game, only 23 assists. And it's not just 23 assists. It's 23 assists to 22 turnovers. That ratio is no bueno. No bueno. You would like for the Grizzlies to be a team that's closer to, like, if you want to say season average wise, I think averaging 28 assists, 27 and a half, 28 assists, somewhere around there, and then ending up around 15 turnovers a game is ideal numbers. But these high 20s, in these mid-20s, in turnovers, is not going to be acceptable at some point. And now, it's mainly because the offense is brand new. Like, that's the whole thing with the fact that these turnovers, it basically was a continuation of what we saw in the first game. I know I talked about wanting to see some improvement there. I know Joe Monax talked about it as well. It wasn't a lot of that, just quite frankly. So we'll continue to monitor that. And the turnovers, again, some of it is chemistry stuff, and some of it is just they're just trying to play at this super fast pace, which we'll continue to talk about. Like I talked about in yesterday's episode, the Grizzlies want to play super fast. It's probably going to be the fastest the Grizzlies play in franchise history. So you saw in this game there were a lot of times guys would cut and other players would anticipate that they would not cut, and then the ball would just be turned over like that. You saw guys just advancing the ball up the floor too fast, and then guys just being in uncomfortable situations. Then there was the other turnovers, right? Scottie Pippen Jr., I know, had a charge. There were a couple other guys that had offensive fouls and things like that. So correctable issues, with these turnovers. I don't think any of this is not correctable, but it is notable that we're talking about this 2 straight games with the Grizzlies high in the turnover numbers. Desmond Bane found his group in this game, though. If you want to say, oh, give me something good from this game, Damichael. Desmond Bane wasn't really cooking early in the first half, but then the second half happened, and he was like, let me remind these dudes I'm Desmond Bane. Because Des did not shoot well in that first game. I think he was 1 of 8 on 3-pointers. Yeah, not worried about him at all. 1 of 8, Desmond Bane, 3-pointer. You know he's going to eventually get to the mean. And the mean in this game, he made 3 of his 5 3-point attempts, finished with 17 points overall, 7 of 13 shooting from the field. Desmond Bane's fine. That's probably the least of my worries. He's been super consistent. He keeps talking about the fact that he wants to be a better defender for this team. Make sure you keep an eye on that. Monitor that, because Desmond Bane said something interesting. I always wonder how other players, they talk about the NFL, and they always say, oh, the NFL is a copycat league and things like that. And Desmond Bane was talking in the locker room, and he mentioned the fact that he said, yeah, I watched the playoffs last year. Well, not last year, last season. And he was talking about Minnesota. He was talking about Boston. And he pointed out a couple other teams. And he said, they all had good wing defenders. And it's true. Minnesota, you saw Anthony Edwards, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden McDaniels. And then Boston, Drew Holiday, Derek White, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, etc. Like, there were very little weaknesses with the guard and wing defenders on those teams. And Desmond Bane is aiming to get to that level of those type teams. So we'll continue to monitor his progress on the defensive end. Speaking of the defensive end, there were some issues with the perimeter defense in this game. And quite frankly, I don't know how correctable this will be from an individual standpoint. This is something you got to scheme. Perimeter defense was an issue. Now, it was only an issue against a couple players that it really stood out again to me. Trey Mann, who is very, slick ball handler, shifty guard type of guy, and Brandon Miller, who's one of the more talented young guards or wings in the NBA, however you want to put it, but second-year player. Brandon Miller had his way with the Grizzlies for the most part. Marcus Smart, got a steal on him early in the game, forced a turnover, but it was like when Marcus Smart went out of the game and when Marcus Smart wasn't guarding for the most part, everything came easy for him. 8 of 13 from the field, 6 of 8 on 3-pointers for Brandon Miller. He had 22 points pretty much in 24 minutes. So close to a point per minute type production from Brandon Miller. And then Trey Mann, kind of the same ilk, 19 points in 22 minutes, 8 of 13 shooting from the field. Just very shifty guard. I asked Marcus Smart, what it's going to take for these guys to be able to defend those guys. And he basically said, we'll get the scouting report. We'll learn. And then he basically, they gave the veteran answer, talking about the standpoint like, it's preseason games. It's no pressure really like that right now, which is true. It was a decent crowd at the FedEx Forum, but it wasn't anything like you're going to see in the regular season when you got everybody yelling defense and all of that good stuff. So, but perimeter defense, again, I asked Marcus Smart at Media Day, who's going to be the guy who steps in when you go to the bench while Vince Williams is out? Because that's my question. And this game kind of showed why I asked that. And quite frankly, you talk about early in the season, when Vince Williams isn't available, and you say, hey, Marcus Smart, you got to go sit for 15 minutes, and because you end up playing somewhere around 33. You sit for 15 minutes. Who's going to be that dog that says, all right, Marcus is out? I want Brandon Miller. I want Luka. I want Kevin Durant. I want to guard LeBron. Who's going to be that guy? Marcus Smart advocated at the time for Jake LaRavia. And while I was watching Jake LaRavia, closely when those guys came in the game and when Marcus Smart was out of the game. And there was only a few times where I remember him really being matched up, specifically with Brandon Miller. He wasn't really matched up with Trey Mann. There were other guys matched up with him. I thought Scottie Pippen Jr., by the way, did a great job pressuring the basketball from the standpoint of the guy who can pick up full court. He forced the turnover into that guy, one of the Hornets guards, to push him while they were trying to inbound the basketball. So you look at, what he brings to the table, Scottie Pippen Jr., that is, from a pressuring the basketball standpoint, he can do that. And you look at the fact that, Jake LaRavia has the measurable 6'7", 235, strong guy. I expect for him to kind of take that matchup with like the Brandon Millers going forward. But we didn't see, much of that in this game. I know we saw a lot of John Conchar guarding those guys. And I think Luke Kennard was in there as well. But that question is still near the top of the list for me because the Western Conference, again, it's loaded with great perimeter scorers. You're going to have a couple guys, and more than a couple, really. Marcus Smart, you can go to the bank with him. Vince Williams Jr., same thing. But I still think you need a couple more because, like Desmond Bain said, Minnesota Timberwolves, they didn't just have Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards. They had Nickeil Alexander-Walker to throw in there, and Mike Conley, we know how solid of a defender he is. And then same thing with the Celtics. It wasn't just Jason Tatum. It wasn't just Jaylen Brown. It wasn't just Drew Holiday. It's Derek White, as well. So, these teams have depth with these different guys that you can put in these positions as perimeter defenders. That's something that I want to see, as we talk about with the Grizzlies going forward. That's an area that they need to kind of iron out a little bit more because that's going to be something that will increase my confidence in what this team could do this season. Something else that will increase my confidence in what this team will do this season is Marcus Smart's health, if he's well. We're going to talk about that in Locked On Grizzlies in a little bit. Before we get to that, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Listen, Gametime, if you're going to a live event and you say, oh, where do I go to get my tickets? You listen to Locked On Grizzlies, you know you need to be going to Gametime. Because Gametime, for one, they have this new feature that's called Gametime Picks. And that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier than before. Gametime Picks filters out the fluffy stuff so you can show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. And it's simple. Look, you got so many ways you can take advantage of these opportunities. But through the app features, you could get curated deals that make it easier for you to find the best price on great seats. You get the super deal. You get the seat views before you buy. So no tricky stuff. You get to look at the seats before you buy. And you get the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and you get job loss protection as well. All of these things come with it. And with that seat view, I'm talking about a panoramic view, like from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee will credit you 110% of the difference. Again, if it's not the lowest price, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. That's how confident Gametime is that they can get you the lowest price out there. How do you go take advantage of this? Well, it's simple. Go take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime right now. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, go use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Coming up here next on Locked On Grizzlies, we got to talk about Marcus Smart. I talked to him after the game. We got an injury update on him. Stay tuned for that. So Marcus Smart banged knees with a Charlotte Hornets player in this game. And for a second, you were thinking, oh, no, here we go again. I know I sent out a post on X that showed, his knee was wrapped up in ice. But this situation played out, scarily similar to the way that Ja Morant's injury happened in the first game. For one, it was the second quarter again. I mean, so many similarities. It was the second quarter. Marcus Smart tried to go behind the back with his pass, and when he went behind the back, there was a Hornets defender who was already on the ground and were already on the floor. Marcus Smart's knee banged into his knee. If you ever hit knees with someone, you kind of know how that feels. Marcus Smart went to the floor, tried to get up, slowly got up, and he was walking very gingerly. Tried to walk it off under his own power, and then he just looked at Taylor Jenkins and he signaled for a sub. Came out of the game. Me personally, at this point, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, he's done, right? Like I said, played out very similar to the Ja Morant situation. He goes to the back, comes back with an ice pack. They ice it for a little bit. Next thing you know, takes the ice pack off. Marcus Smart's back in the game late in the second quarter. Comes back in the game, starts the third quarter with the Grizzlies, just like Ja Morant did. I mean, I'm telling y'all, this was some freakishly similar stuff. Starts the third quarter with the Grizzlies, and I mean, it was the first Grizzlies team timeout. It was probably a minute or two into the third quarter, and Marcus Smart is hobbling. Like, just he looked slow starting the third quarter, but he was hobbling, making his way to the bench, looked over at Taylor Jenkins, signaled, and that's when you knew he was done. As he told me in the locker room after the game, he said he's learning that, as he said, bruh, you're 11 years in now. Your body don't heal the same way it used to. Sound like some realism coming from Marcus Smart there. But at the end of the day, he's fine. Marcus Smart's fine. This isn't something that I expect to really carry out too long or anything like that. In his own words, Marcus Smart said if the next game was a regular season NBA game, he'd be fine. He would be able to play. So breathe in, breathe out about that one. I probably would say you shouldn't expect to see him on Saturday. That would be my guess. That's not anything on intel. But again, we know the Grizzlies and their cautious approach with Ja Morant, with Jaren Jackson Jr. Now you can pretty much throw Marcus Smart in there after the knee sequence. It's going to be bruised up a little bit because he banged knees with someone. He iced it up. But at the same time, not really expecting him to do much more else. I did talk to him about the idea of coming back into the game in the first place, because this happened twice now. And when it happened with Ja Morant, remember, hurt the ankle, asked to come out of the game, and comes back in, re-injures it. Same thing with Marcus Smart. Asked to come out of the game, comes back in, re-injures it. Goes out of the game, doesn't return. So as it turns out, and I would be willing, I'm pretty sure this was the case with Ja Morant too, but in this case, Marcus Smart wanted to go back in the game himself. He said he wanted to test it out. And I think I asked Taylor Jenkins the same question, something like, whose decision was it for Marcus Smart to even go back in the game in the first place? And, Taylor Jenkins, I think, said something like it was a collective decision. But Marcus Smart kind of alluded to the fact that he was the one who wanted to go in and test it out and whatnot. So the Grizzlies, I think, still, like, I know there have been some people saying, oh, why would the Grizzlies put him back in the game? Clearly, I think this was a case where it was Marcus Smart's choice. Marcus Smart wanted to go back in the game, and it didn't work out. Now, going forward, just like with Ja Morant, just like with Jaren Jackson Jr., I think you err on the side of caution here. You got a game Saturday, you got a game Monday. He definitely shouldn't play in both. I mean, if he plays in one, it's up to the Grizzlies, depending on how he heals and all that good stuff. Like, again, there's going to be some bruising, but if he heals fast, maybe he does get a chance to play on Monday. If he doesn't, no sweat. You got a few days to rest, and you got one more preseason game after that that you can get him ready for, and potentially some other guys as well. So that's pretty much what we know on Marcus Smart right now. He's fine. Like I said, the main thing I took from it was he said that if it was a regular season game, if it was that time of the year, he would be ready to go. So everyone just relax, on Marcus Smart and the injury thing. I think the Grizzlies overall are getting slowly but surely. They're getting there. Cam Spencer's no longer in a boot. So I've talked about Vince Williams and Jaren Jackson Jr. Both are doing some individual stuff right? They're not doing half court stuff with team activities, nothing like that, but they're doing one on zero stuff where they're getting workouts. They're getting the work in. So slowly but surely, the Grizzlies are going to get back healthy here, potentially by the regular season. The goal is for Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. All signs point to them playing that first game of the season. So maybe we get to see Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ja Morant alongside of rookie first-round pick Zach Edey. That's what we're going to talk about in our next segment, because a lot of people have been asking about Zach Edey and what he brings to the table. But before we talk about Zach Edey, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel, look, hey, NFL fans, I want to talk to you for a second. You can start your NFL season with a big return on FanDuel, because you know this is America's #1 sportsbook, right? So when you get your hunch in the middle of the game, when you check out the latest stats, you're looking at the play-by-play and all that good stuff, you go to the same page to place your bets. And if you're new to FanDuel, you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Yeah, you heard me right. All you got to do is bet $5. You get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed over at FanDuel.com. So many other ways to take advantage of this opportunity as well. You can do money line bets where basically you're just picking the winner. You can do spread bets where you're picking how much a team is going to win or lose by. And you also could do same game parlays, which I like to do. That's my favorite. You go to a particular game and you just pick certain stats from that game that you think will happen. If you think a guy in the NFL is going to rush for 20 yards, 30 yards, 40 yards, 50 yards, whatever the case may be, that guy's going to pass for so many yards, you can tag team those selections and turn them into one big winning. How do you do this? All you got to do is go over to FanDuel.com right now to check out this good opportunity. Again, that's FanDuel.com to check out the opportunities available at America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, and now we got to talk about Zach Edey. The big man in the middle, right? The big man in the middle who everyone wants to get the basketball, but everyone doesn't know how to figure out where and when he gets the ball. So let's break this down. We got 2 Zach Edey games so far. First one, a lot of foul trouble, 6 points, 7 rebounds. Live to fight another day. Let's see what happens in game 2. Then you get game 2. 2 of 8 shooting from the field. 3 of them are three-pointers. One was like a half-court heave. So, But anyways, 2 of 8 from shooting from the field. 6 of 8 at the free throw line. Did get to the free throw line in this game as well. But 10 points for the big man. 5 rebounds. Stayed out of foul trouble in this one. Let's note that. 22 minutes played for Zach Edey. Only 1 foul. So there were a couple things that I noticed in this game. And I did a full story on this as well as commercialappeal.com. You could go check it out. You'll get more player insight on this whole idea of how they're trying to work alongside of Zach Edey. Here's the thing. If you look at the Zach Edey, what he brings to the table, and he's 7'4", he's 290 pounds, and at Purdue, he did a lot of his scoring in the paint. He was a very dominant paint scoring option. The Grizzlies haven't really played that brand of basketball from getting the ball inside to an interior presence and just letting them cook. Really hasn't been their thing. Now let's talk about this new offense. The main thing that I gathered from talking to the guys in the locker room and what we've talked to Taylor Jenkins about over the last week or so, this Grizzlies team right now, the name of the game for them offensively is pace. Pace, 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 pace. They want to play fast, and faster. They want to be the fastest playing team. They want to lead the NBA in transition scoring. Taylor Jenkins, I don't know how many times he said the word pace in his post-game press conference on yesterday, but he kept saying it. He kept saying it. He was talking about taking the ball out of the net, slowing them down, basically not being able to turn defense into offense and things like that. The Grizzlies want to run. And when you run, you don't got time to, hey, go post that guy up down there in the paint while we're trying to run. No, it's Get the ball up the floor, throw it ahead. You're looking for layups, you're looking for dunks or whatever the case may be. And Zach Edey actually had one of those. He ran the floor really well, and there was a time Grizzlies teammate found him, easy dunk, boom, right in the basket in the first quarter. So this whole idea of pace is not really conducive to low post interior scoring. Now, with that being said, here's another factor. The Grizzlies are still installing things. The Grizzlies have a lot more to install from an offensive perspective. When we talk about, how they're going to run their actions, potential sets they're going to run, there are going to be more sets installed for Ja Morant. There are going to be sets installed for Jaren Jackson Jr. And you know what? Probably going to be some sets installed for Zach Edey too. Pace has been what they've been pressing. So I'm saying that to say, talking to a couple of players, I kind of got the feeling, and Luke Kennard kind of even said it in so many words, that they've been so focused on pace, interior scoring has not even become, that type of emphasis yet. It is a common basketball IQ thing to these guys. Like, clearly, if you see a 7'4" guy with a little guy on him, you get him the ball. But they've been emphasizing pace so much. That's something that's probably going to come down the road a little bit more. So here's a couple things I want to add to this Zach Edey conversation, how the Grizzlies can feed him the ball. One thing that I want to talk about is Zach Edey's never going to get Purdue-like touches here. And when I say Purdue-like touches, not the volume. I'm not talking about the volume, because, of course, that he's not going to get that with Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr. on the floor. But I'm talking about always the 2 feet in the paint, just throw it down to him type touches. He'll see those every now and then. And there were a couple situations, I think, there were a couple seals where the Grizzlies missed them. There was one, and where it was the other way around. Marcus Smart saw Zach Edey. Zach Edey put a guy pretty much under the basket on the Hornets. And he was right there. All he had to do is stay right there, wait on Marcus Smart to deliver the pass, turn around 2 points and one probably because he was going to get fouled. I mean, the guy was pretty much under the basket. He was helpless. But Zach Edey, again, because that whole idea of pace, right? So when you're posting a guy up and the ball doesn't come immediately to you in that moment, okay, let me relocate. That, I feel like that's what Zach Edey thought in that moment. And when he relocated, as soon as he relocated, Marcus Smart saw him posting the guy up. It looked like he was about to deliver the ball when he got an angle. And when he relocated, Marcus Smart looked at him, pointed, and basically was like, no, go post up again. And he tried to post up again, did not get the same position. Marcus Smart still force-fed him the ball in there, turnover Grizzlies. So that's time. That's reps. Eventually, Zach Edey will have that position. He say, man, I can still stay here. Marcus Smart's going to give me the ball. That takes time. That's going to take reps. And I think, you once you understand that he's not going to get the ball nonstop in this offense because of the way they like to play, the pace and all that things. But the opportunities will be there. Ja Morant and Desmond Bane was sitting on the bench talking about, like, oh, look, he's stealing the guy right there, and we didn't throw him the ball. Like, the team didn't throw the ball. Ja Morant's going to throw it to him. Marcus Smart, he's going to throw him the basketball. So he's going to get more of those touches. It's not going to be hey, throw it to him every single play and let's let him cook type thing. But the Grizzlies are going to be more advantageous. As Desmond Bane told me in the locker room after the game, we got to do better with that. The guards have to do better with getting Zach Edey the ball. But it's not just them. Zach Edey has to kind of meet them halfway here as well. This is a tough learning lesson for him because he's learning the spacing aspect. He's learning the new offense. And then within learning the new offense, like you talk about just the small intricacies of how this stuff works. So when Zach Edey moves, when he's sealing a guy in the paint and he's trying to get position, and when he moves from that, he's likely going to the dunker spot, right? That's pretty much probably 2 feet right outside of the paint, in the short corner. So he's going to the dunker spot. And what he has to realize is sometimes he wants to duck down and go seal, but the Grizzlies are having all these cutters because of this new offense. If you watch this game, Desmond Bane was cutting like crazy. Jake LaRavia was cutting to the basket a lot. Santi Aldama was cutting a little bit, and he also found a couple guys on cuts, and he also had some turnovers on cuts as well. But the Grizzlies, again, the ball was moving very well, just like it was in that first game, simply because you don't have a lot of guys being stagnant around the perimeter. It's not a lot of guys just standing in the corner. No, they're moving, they're cutting. And with all this cutting, Zach Edey is the player who's most affected by it. He's the most affected by it because he is not supposed to cut. And he's not supposed to duck into, duck under the basket, seal a guy while another player's cutting, and then you bring an extra defender to the player who's cutting, and then boom, turnover Grizzlies. Because more than likely the center that's guarding Zach Edey is going to get his hands on that basketball. So Zach Edey's learning his teammates. Okay, this guy Desmond Bane, he likes to cut. He's going to so let me make sure I'm in a dunker spot. So if he does cut and he gets the basketball, he has two plays. He could throw me the alley-oop if my defender commits to him. He could dump me the basketball off. Or he can get an easy layup off of a cut because he beat his defender. That's what Zach Edey's having to learn. And it's a balance. And it takes time. So he's going to get the ball. He's going to get the ball a little bit more. And I know more people want to see that. And there were some obvious times in this game. Like I said, Ja Morant and Desmond Bane even noticed it on the bench. There were some moments where you said, they're supposed to give him the ball right there. But you know what? That is something that we could expect to improve potentially going forward with the Grizzlies. Speaking of going forward with the Grizzlies, we thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies with us and making us your first listen every day. Shout out to the everydayers because we appreciate you guys. Now, for your second listen, find the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast. Become a fantasy basketball expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Josh Lord. Find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're going to have a lot to talk about next week on Locked On Grizzlies, including breaking down another game. We didn't really get to preview this game because we had a lot to talk about from this matchup, but I would suspect this isn't intel yet. It's just kind of what I'm probably think is going to happen. There's probably going to be a couple more Grizzlies that set this next game out. So we're going to see a lot of the young guns probably when the Grizzlies head to Chicago on Saturday. So make sure you come back with us on Monday morning. We'll break down that game against the Chicago Bulls as well as preview a game against the Indiana Pacers on Monday. Another road game for the Grizzlies in the preseason coming up. But until then, guys, we appreciate you for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. And remember, Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you on Locked On Grizzlies.